our two speakers that we have with us today. So we have Carl Landers, who's the Senior Vice President and CMO at Conversica. And Carl has 20 years of marketing experience in B2B software and technology companies. And in 2015, he joined Conversica as the company's first CMO in order to boost awareness of the company and drive significant sales pipeline. And we also have Erroin Martin with us, and he is the VP of Sales. And he brings 19 years of experience in sales leading with various teams across the United States. So again, we're very pleased to have them with us. And with that, I will turn it over to Carl to get us started.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Selma. Really appreciate that introduction. I'm so glad that I have a year on my colleague here who has joined me for this webcast. Erroin, any words for our audience to get started?
I'm excited. I'm not the only salesperson in this webcast. There's at least 2 other people out there, so it's going to be really good.
That is right. We saw from the poll results that even though it's the American Marketing Association, we did have a few salespeople on, and that's great because the topic we're going to talk about today, the shocking truth about lead follow-up, is really a story about the handoff from marketing to sales.
Yeah.
And so you have represented with you today on this webcast marketing and sales from Conversica. And just a few words about why this is Conversica. We're really in the business of helping people with lead follow-up. And so we've done a lot of research on that topic, which we're going to share with you today. And it's something that's very near and dear to our hearts here. And so we're going to share with you the research we've done and then tell you a little bit about some best practices on how we've seen it being able to be improved. I lead marketing at Conversica, and I invited Erroin to join me because, frankly, his wife's in Fiji on a National Geographic outing to find the remains of Amelia Earhart using cadaver dogs.
That's correct.
And so he had nothing else to do today.
Exactly right. Nothing else to do today.
If anyone would like to comment about that in the chat, feel free to do so. I thought it was very interesting when I heard about it, and I'm sure we'll all hear in the news if they find her.
That's right. Very much so. Yep.
Right. Let's get on. It's a Friday, and we're so happy that it's not just Erroin and Carl here. We actually have several hundred people on with us. As Selma mentioned, feel free to ask questions as we go through here, and we will answer them as we go and certainly at the end. So the presentation we're going to do today is really based on an annual research project that we've done, which we call the Sales Effectiveness Lead Follow-Up Research Report. And you can see a copy of it here on your screen, and we're going to send a copy to everyone as part of the follow-up email for attending the webcast today. So everything that we talk about here is in the report in more detail, including all of the statistics that we refer to, and the best practices are all footnoted back to their original sources. So if you want to find out, well, where did they get that stat, it's in the report. We do this every year, and we're looking at the version that we did at the end of last year, where we surveyed 538 companies across 9 different industries. And you can see on the right side of the screen, in B2B, we did media and publishing companies, technology and telecom companies. B2C, automotive, brokerage, education, insurance, mortgage, lending, and real estate. So I'm sure that with all of the people on the webcast today, we've got many of your industries covered. In fact, maybe even some of your companies were included in the research. The way the research works is that we reach out to the companies that we select, and we secret shop, essentially, the website. So we go to the website, we look for the main offer that the company, the product or service that the company is offering, and we submit a request to learn more. So for a software company, it might be a demo. For an insurance company, it's requesting a quote. For an education institution, it might be learning about enrolling. Whatever the primary call to action is on the home page of the site, we make a web form inquiry, and if there isn't a web form, Then we attempt to see, is there a contact us email address, and then we send an email requesting information. So we use a business or consumer persona to do that. All of these submittals are done during business hours. We do it on Pacific time in the U.S. because that's where we're located. We do it Monday through Friday, kind of 9 to 4. And then we measure all of the responses that come back. And the responses come back, of course, as emails. They come back sometimes as SMS text messages. And they come back as telephone calls. And so we record the number and the frequency and how quickly these responses come back. And we do that over, I believe, a 21-day period.
That's correct, yeah.
Yep.
21 days.
All right. So with that background of how we do the research, we're going to reveal to you now some of the most shocking findings and then get into the detail. But before we do that, we wanted you guys to give us a bit of an assessment of your own company. So let's go ahead to the next poll. And in that poll question, we want to know, how would you rate your organization's ability to promptly and persistently follow up with leads? So before we show you what we found in the research, you tell us how you think you're doing in this category. And I'm very eager to see if people rate themselves as excellent, because then we might ask Erroin, why are you on this call? But let's see how the results come back. It looks like most people have answered, so you can see the results on your screen there. And what do we see? 40%. It's a very interesting normal distribution.
Yep.
Most people think that their follow-up on leads is fair, and an equal number think maybe not good and very good, and then a few don't know. And we do have 6% who have said excellent. So please note your name and email address in the chat. We would love to follow up with you and find out what you're doing very well, because we would love to learn from your best practice.
Yeah.
So interesting distribution. Any surprises for you, Erroin?
Not really. I think they all look very, what we probably saw in our own study results, so I think it's going to line up very nicely.
Perfect. Well, let's go on then and see what the actual survey results showed. And the first shocking finding is that of the 538 companies that we secret shopped in this version of the research, 30%, or nearly 1 out of 3, did not respond at all.
Yeah.
Not a single phone call, not a single email response after filling out their primary call to action. As the sales leader, Erroin, if this were your company and someone in your team did not follow up with a hot lead, how would you feel about that?
I would feel devastated about that. I mean, a hot lead, someone raising their hand, filling out a form for information or to see a demo, you know, they really want to do business with you. They've done the research, they're ready to buy, and to fail to follow up with that, that just kind of, it's like a punch in the gut.
It's really quite hard to believe.
It is hard to believe, and yet it happens every single day.
It certainly does, and we're about to show you that it's hard to do it. Even when you do it well, it's hard to be consistent. The second shocking finding is that more than half the companies gave up far too soon. So now we're down to a population of 377 companies because a third didn't respond at all. So
Yep.
Obviously we're not measuring those guys. So out of the 377 that did respond, 55% made only 1 or 2 attempts and gave up.
And it makes sense, though, because I'm a sales guy. I have new leads coming in. I don't want to chase you down 4, 5, 6 times. I want to go what's hot. I want to get that hot lead right now. And there are a lot of reasons why people give up.
So you're saying that you would coach your team to make just 1 or 2 attempts?
Well, no. I would coach my team to make more than 1 or 2 attempts, Carl. But the reality is, as a rep, they've got so many other things going on, meetings, deal cycles, and so forth. They tend to just gravitate like moths to a flame, the hottest lead, and they give up once they feel it's gone cold, which unfortunately for most companies or most people, it's 2 or 3 attempts.
You're absolutely right about that, and we're going to show how it could be better. The last shocking finding is that almost every company can do better. So what we're showing here in this chart is year-over-year comparison. So what we saw is that if companies scored an A grade, and we'll talk about the scoring, but across the board, if they scored an A grade in the first year of the report, were they able to repeat that same top performance in the second year of being shopped? And it turns out that by far most of them were not.
Exactly.
And what this shows is that you can be good, you could be an A performer at one particular point in time, another particular point in time, you can drop the ball.
Well, you're only as good as your humans. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. And if your humans are on their A game, you're on your A game. When they're not on your A game, you're not on your A game.
Fair enough. And I think what we're seeing here is that consistency is really hard to achieve.
Exactly right.
You can be great 89% of the time, but that 1% when someone comes to your site and asks for information and you miss it, it seems like a failure to them.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Okay. So with that introduction of some of the shocking truths, we're now going to introduce the way that we measure this follow-up. And so I'd like to present to you what we call the 4 Ps of successful lead follow-up. And we're going to briefly describe these and then ask you in a poll question, which of these do you think needs improving most in your organization? So let me briefly introduce them. Promptness, of course, how quickly do you follow up after that initial inquiry?
Yep.
Next is persistence. We've talked about that. Do you make 1 attempt, 2, 5, 10?
12.
What's the level of persistence to reach the person who has expressed interest in your product or service?
Yep.
You're trying to get in touch with them.
Yep.
The third step is how personal is that outreach? Is it a form autoresponder email listing 17 videos that you can watch, or is it a personal note from the person handling the lead to the prospect saying, I would love to connect with you?
Yeah.
And the fourth one is performance, and here we're talking specifically about email now. Is the email likely to get into the lead's inbox, or is it likely to get caught in a spam filter? And we measure how well that does. So with the introduction to the 4 Ps, let me bring up the next polling question and ask those of you attending today on this beautiful sunny Friday in the summer, which lead follow-up best practice do you think needs the most improvement in your organization? And we'll get a sense from our audience what they're thinking, and then we'll go into the 4 Ps in a bit more detail and show you what our survey results showed. So we've got some responses coming back. Erroin, your thoughts on what you're seeing on the screen?
I am not surprised what we're seeing on the screen. This is all what I expected.
I see a lot of concern around persistence.
They know, like everybody else, that their reps give up. It's very sad. Very, very sad.
We're getting a few more. Promptness is actually moving up a bit. So people feel like performance they're going to give the lowest score to. It's not the biggest thing on their mind, that getting the email in the inbox probably is not the biggest deal when you have to wrestle with the other Ps.
Exactly right. Speed of contact, being persistent, following up. Now Maria says promptness.
Promptness.
Yeah.
Very good.
Votes in there in the
but
chatter.
still, persistence is by far the highest.
Yeah.
All right. With that information from you, our audience, thank you for sharing that with us. It helps us to focus here. Let's talk through each of the 4 Ps, and we'll give them appropriate time based on the feedback we've gotten from our audience here. So let's jump into the first P of promptness. Now, I think intuitively everyone knows that the sooner you get in touch with someone, while they're in that mindset, they've been on your website, they're thinking about your product or service, they give up their contact information saying, I would like to learn more. If you can reach them while you are still top of mind, you're much more likely to convert them into a telephone call, a meeting, an opportunity, a closed-won deal, a policy signed, whatever it is that you're selling.
True.
So we cite a number of different research surveys here on this particular slide that we're going to talk about. But once again, in the report that we're going to send everyone, you've got the full detail of where these metrics are coming from. So why is promptness important? We just said likelihood of conversion drops significantly after just a few minutes. Research from Inside Sales says that odds of qualifying a lead are 20 times higher if you do it at 5 minutes instead of 30. And of course, 1 hour is 60 times more likely than waiting a day, and that's from a lead response management survey. All of these are telling us that promptness is really important. And Erroin, from your point of view, managing a sales team, how likely are people to be able to maintain a high level of promptness to follow up?
It's a tough job to do. Again, going back to the fact that they're only human beings, Carl, they can't be strapped in the seat 24/7 without the with headphones on and not allowed to leave. They've got to have lunch, take breaks, and do all those sorts of things. So promptness is tough. I mean, as a marketer, you try to cover us with some air cover with some autoresponders that come out of our marketing automation system. My reps may have some triggers in their CRM that may do things as well too, but at the end of the day, I still need that person on the phone to make the call, and if they don't, they lose that opportunity. And the data is there. 21 times higher in 5 minutes, or 60 times better than an hour over 24 hours. It's a tough thing to do. And we've all been, as customers, recipient of that as well. Where we've submitted inquiries and no one gets back to us, we feel like, they don't want our business, I'll move to the next guy.
All right. Good feedback. I think, several of the things that get in the way of promptness could just be system and process issues. Imagine if it takes you 18 minutes to route a lead to the appropriate person for follow-up, how could you possibly get back to them in 1 minute?
Very true. Very true.
Now, what we're going to see in the next slide is how we're actually doing in promptness across the companies that we surveyed. And let me first point out, up here in the upper right of the slide, you'll see the grading that we use. So here we're measuring the time from when the inquiry was submitted to the time when the first personalized outreach happens.
Yeah.
Now, admittedly, we don't measure autoresponder emails. Almost every company, if you submit a form, you're going to get an email back immediately saying, "Thank you, Erroin, for your inquiry. Someone will follow up with you shortly." So that we don't consider to be a personalized outreach. So we measure when does someone make a personalized outreach. Okay, so here we see that in our survey, the initial response time ranged from less than a minute, very impressive, to 17 days until the first outreach was made.
Well, you're just not that special, Carl, that's why.
Thank you for sharing that with our audience. Most did respond within an hour. We'll see that in the chart below. Only 42% got within the 5-minute key, what we call the conversion zone.
Yeah.
If you can get within 5 minutes, you've got a great shot. So let's look down below. We see that there's our 42% that landed within 5 minutes with that first personalized outreach. So that's very good.
Yep.
That's really good. And we add another 22% who got in there within the first hour. Okay, so that's going to be a B grade. And then you can see if it took you between an hour and a day, that was now a C grade in our grading.
Yeah.
If it took more than a day, up to a week, we gave you a D. That's pretty generous, I have to say. If you waited a week to follow up, I would say you've probably lost interest. And if you took more than a week, you got the F grade. So I believe that the person or company who took 17 days would get an
F. They would get an F. Yes,
they would get an F.
That's a massive fail.
That's right. The good news is we have 64% getting within an hour, and 40% within 5 minutes, very attractive. On the right side, you're going to see the breakdown by industry. And this is a mix, as we said, of B2B and B2C companies that are being surveyed. And in this particular case, when we're looking at promptness, hats off to educational institutions. More than half of them received an A grade in this category.
And it makes sense. They need to get cheeks in the seats, Carl. That's how it works. So, and the speed to contact to get that student while they're hot to go to your school, whether it be for-profit or nonprofit universities, you've got to reach out and connect right away.
It's interesting because you would think of education decisions as being a very long-term consideration. But obviously, these institutions that we shop really feel the need to be very prompt in their follow-up.
Correct.
Now we switch to a B2B industry, technology. 50% of those companies also got an A grade and got in within 5 minutes.
Yep.
Impressive.
Yep. Very impressive. And I think they buy into statistics because a lot of companies we cited in the previous slide deal in technology. So again, it's speed to contact is very important for a technology company in a B2B or B2C environment. And as you can see, I've got a couple questions that came in. What did telecom get? They're not in the top 5, so they did not score very well in our survey. And for the education side, we only did higher education, which is postgraduate studies, after high school. We didn't do K through 12, so no private schools.
No K through 12.
Yeah.
That's correct. This is higher ed. We should have said that up front. Good clarification. All right. So we've talked about promptness. Anything else that you want to add in on promptness, Erroin, before we move on from a sales point of view?
Yeah, from a sales point of view, speed to contact is not just that first initial outreach, but speed to contact throughout the entire process with the lead or prospect. Engaging with them and answering their questions promptly is very, very important, keeping the conversation going.
I would say from the marketing perspective, I would just add that one of the things we're constantly optimizing is getting that inquiry to the right person as quickly as possible.
Correct.
So that they can make that personal outreach. Of course, we're going to send that autoresponder right away, but we want to get that lead assigned to Jim and have Jim make that phone call or that email as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot of things get in the way. We like to score first. We want to do some data augmentation on that. There are a lot of requests that, frankly, slow down the process of routing that. In fact, in many companies, there won't be any follow-up at all until the lead scores a certain level.
Exactly.
So even though the person maybe has requested something important, we're going to wait for 2 or 3 other activities before we reach out.
And that's all built out in human bias to begin with, which forces that to be sort of slow to respond. And it doesn't matter if your sales cycle is very short or if your sales cycle takes years. It's the initial outreach is what we're talking about. So it's that lead coming in. If you're selling nuclear power plants and someone wants to buy one, well, it has to start somewhere, and you have to start engaging with them right away.
And that's a great answer to Lauren's question. She's asking, well, we have a long decision purchase time. Maybe It takes 9 months or 18 months to consider, or in your case of the nuclear power plant, 18 years. The point here is that if someone expresses interest in your product or service by raising their hand and filling out the most attractive offer that you're making on your site, they have you top of mind in that moment. They want to be contacted. Even if it's going to take 18 months to close the sale, you want to reach that person right away.
Exactly.
All right.
Which I think then goes into our next category, which would be persistence.
Absolutely, and thank you for that segue.
And that's the one that scored the highest on the poll questions as well too. So persistence is obviously very key for everyone that's out there. And it's not just reaching out and engaging with the person, it's also being persistent. Because let's be honest, I submit an inquiry, I get a phone call from a number I don't know, it's going straight to voicemail. It's when the person tries 3, 4, 5, or we found that optimum time anywhere from 8 to 12 to be really key. So attempting to contact just 3 times instead of once doubles your chances of getting a conversion or response. Makes sense. You're catching the person at the right time. Companies with the fastest growing revenue were likely to attempt contact with a lead 5 to 8 times. So the top companies that we looked at, not just by size but also in the different verticals, were the ones that were growing rapidly, had a very persistent team in engaging those leads. That's very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And overall response and conversion rates continue to grow at the 8th attempt and beyond. So the magic, there is a certain number that's a little too much. I think we had one person contact us 5 times in a day, within a few hours.
First day, yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit too much overreach. But there is, attempting to keep going. And it's not just a nurture campaign. It's not a drip. It's not an automated response. It's a human being trying to reach out to another human being to get their business. And that is very, very key. And again, this data comes from other sources that we had as well too, which all will be referenced in the report that you will get. And what we found, I think the time to show the results on the persistence is that a lot of companies that did really well in promptness didn't necessarily transfer over to their persistence scores.
And you referred, I think, correctly earlier to the fact that, frankly, it's hard to be persistent.
It's tough.
You've got new leads coming in potentially if you're the person responsible for following up on that segment, that territory. Why make the 5th contact on someone from 5 days ago when someone new has just arrived?
Well, exactly, Carl. It's making me a tough choice. I've got to be prompt on all the new ones coming in, and I've got to be persistent on all the old ones that are sitting in my queue, and it's also in the quarter, in a month for us, Carl. So I've got deals to close and business to make, and I got to have that all-important talk about what we're going to do on the weekend. It's tough to be persistent and to follow up. And you can put systems in place, and you can automate a piece of that puzzle, but automation is not enough. You've got to still have that human-to-human outreach.
Yes, and we've got several questions that have come in to help clarify. So in the case of persistence, we're referring to any personal touch, so a phone call where a voicemail is left, an email saying, hi, this is Jim, I'd love to get in touch with you. Can we schedule a meeting? Or can I get you that quote you requested? Can I share with you why you want to come to Global University? So this includes all of the outreach attempts. The different channels people are using to reach the lead are absolutely included in here. And what we see is, and we didn't publish this in the research, but I see a question about it, and I think we should. What's kind of the optimum sequence? So do I go call on day 1, email on day 2, then 2 calls on day 4, and then email on day 5, and of course that's going to depend on the industry, I think, a bit, the level of the person that you're reaching out to, how urgent is the request. For example, we have researched automotive dealers. They know that if you are submitting a request on the website, you're probably shopping 3 or 4 other dealerships looking for the best price or the best service. So they don't want to spread their contact over 28 days.
No, they want to get you right then and there. Or, as we know in research in the insurance industry, some leads are coming from various different sites and sold multiple ways. So speed to contact and multiple attempts in a very short period of time are very important. But at the same time, one thing I just want to say, just a pet peeve out there, I train my team, that if you're going to call, leave a message. Ghosting out and just like dropping down on the, leaving the number, just dialing until they get the voicemail and nothing happens, leave a message. Be persistent. Leave outreach. Make a touch. Make it be human so they know they're not just a power dialer out there.
Perfect. Natalie makes a good point here in her comment that she says, good analytics can help you figure out the right communication cadence. Excellent point. Absolutely. If you are disciplined in logging these activities in your CRM system, for example.
And we all know salespeople are.
Very good. Yes. So emails, phone calls, voice messages left. You can then do a correlation between contact rate and cadence and find the optimum solution.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. Great point. Okay, let's go on now and share the results of persistence. And just as a reminder here, our grading in this case was done by phone and email attempts over the 21-day period. And you could argue for your industry that should be 5 days or 50 days. We picked the number of 21 and gave everyone a grade across that. So as we mentioned in our shocking results, over half the companies that did respond gave up after 2 or fewer attempts. And so that's not great persistence. We already talked about how being persistent does place a lot of demand on the human resources to do
very much so. Yeah.
There's only so much you can automate if you want it to be very personal.
Very true.
And of course, what we all know is that if you've tried 5 times, the incremental value of trying the 6th time is pretty small. You're going to reach most of the people in the first few, but if you want to get the long tail of everyone, you'd have to make a lot of attempts, but it's diminishing returns, isn't it, Erroin?
Correct. All
right. Let's see how we did with our overall scores. So we had an A is that you made 8 attempts or more, and we can see that only 18% of the companies did that. B, 5 to 7 attempts, C, 3 to 4, etc. As you can see here, most of the companies unfortunately landed in the D grade, which is just the 1 or 2 attempts.
Yeah.
And this is really a shocking finding. It's not hard to make 3 or 4, but we're giving up way too soon.
Yeah, very much so. Way too soon.
Now, we mentioned the automotive industry. They scored the highest here in making the 40% of the dealerships contacted and persisted more than 8 times.
Yes.
And got an A score. And then it drops off pretty rapidly. Education still good compared to other industries, but once again, only 20% of the companies making the requisite number of outreaches.
And hey, telecom may not be fast, but they do attempt to reach out more times than once.
Good point. Someone asked about telecom. Didn't make it on promptness, but did okay. 20% scoring an A grade. And technology, very prompt, but only 14% of those companies persisted long enough.
Yep.
And we can see the drop-off from there. All right. Hopefully you're all still with us here, and we're going to move into the third P, which is one of my favorites. And here we're talking about personalization. This is not something that jumps right to mind for people, I think, but in our study, very important that it's the personal outreach that gets the response. So, and here's some research to back that up. Emails from an individual's email address rather than a company email address increased click-through rate by 30%, including a signature in there increased response rate by 20%, and emails that look like a personal letter are opened 130% more and click through 130% more. And you can see our links below where these come from. So here's an example on the right of what we think is a personal outreach, and you can see that we score looking for 5 elements. You could argue, hey, that should be in or that should be out. We picked these 5. Time patterning, that means that the response is sent roughly around the time when the person made the inquiry. So of course, if you're prompt, you're going to do that within 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But then the next day, the follow-up is roughly at the same time because you figure that's when the person was on their computer or their phone, and so we include that. The personal email address, it really should say personal email address at the company,
correct,
not coming from your Gmail account, of course.
Exactly.
So this is from Joe. There's a personalized greeting, hello Amy. There's a mention of what you inquired about. It's not just, hey, I see you were interested, I'd like to contact you, but in this case, Joe is referring to Amy's interest in umbrella liability policy. And then personal contact information, if indeed Amy wanted to reach out to Joe, she's got his office number, extension, email, etc. right there. So those are the personalization elements we're looking for. And unfortunately, we see some pretty bad examples.
These are real results from some of the surveys that we did. So you can see Kimberly at company reaching out to Taylor at lead. Do you really want a demo? No, I just requested that just for shits and giggles. No, I don't want a demo at all.
That's maybe not the best. Otherwise, it's nicely personalized, but the do you really want what we're offering is maybe not your best outreach.
Maybe Kimberly had a really bad day at work. Maybe she got yelled at for not hitting her numbers. Who knows? Don't judge. We can't really ask.
But we are here to judge, frankly. We're here to judge and to grade.
There we are. Very true.
Okay. On the right, we have an email to Jamie. And do you still need help is the subject line.
Interesting.
Hello there, it's been 3 days. Do you still need assistance on your issue? So somehow our request for the most obvious product or service that this company offers went into their kind of customer support queue, and we're getting some automated responses. Maybe not the most personalized outreach.
And maybe a process breakdown as well, too. So it looks like it's going on. And, where is company support from? There's not even a number on there to contact them.
That's good point. Let's look at some good examples. Let's celebrate success rather than failure. So let's look at 2 great examples. So here we have Stephanie, and these are real emails where we have obviously masked the personal information. So Stephanie says, hi Taylor, thank you so much for reaching out to our company. Be happy to discuss interactive web design. So they're talking about what I inquired about. Hey, we'd love to meet with you if you happen to be in Des Moines. Personally, here's some times, and here's Stephanie, and we've got her phone number available right there. So great personalized outreach. I would respond to that email from Stephanie.
And also what's key too is she's not trying to sell, she's just trying to get the meeting.
Really good point from the sales perspective. Say that again.
She's not trying to sell in this email, she's just trying to get the meeting. As we all know, salespeople like the Christmas tree, everything in there, and possibly close as much as possible, but she's definitely just trying to get the meeting, which is very, very key.
So here's a great question that Lauren asks. If they're asking for a quote, should we be coming back with the quote, or should we be coming back to say, hey, let's jump on the call to discuss the quote?
That's an excellent question. I think you can do a little bit of both. I think you can give some information on the quote and also get the call scheduled to walk them through the quote. It depends on how, of course, the processes in your quoting system is set up. If it's a very simple document, I think you can just send it. If it's a document that requires some explanation, I think that personalized outreach can have the quote in there and say, you really need to walk this through you so you fully understand the decision you're going to make, Carl. Let's get on a call at 3 p.m.
Perfect. One of the things that I've heard, I haven't seen research yet on this, but that people prefer to receive an email prior to receiving a phone call.
Exactly.
So this is a great email. If Stephanie now picked up the phone and called Taylor, Taylor's likely to pick up and have that conversation.
Exactly.
She knows who she's going to be speaking with. She's prepped for that call.
Here we go on the right-hand side. Someone already giving out some questions to Taylor. Ryan asking some basic banting questions in his email, so it's not a waste of time for both Ryan and for Taylor. And the outreach is still very personal as well too.
Very personal, and Ryan saying, "Hey, this is what we'd like to talk about." So let's look at how we did on our personalization results. Now, as a reminder, we're grading on how many of these 5 personalization elements are present.
Yeah.
Now, once again, we're grading emails here. We're not grading phone voicemail messages or text messages, so we're looking at emails. And we're including, of course, all the companies that used email. Now, interestingly, 96% did use email. Of the 377 companies that responded, only a few used the phone only.
Interesting.
Almost everybody used email. Nearly everybody had at least one of the 5 elements, which is great. And half of the companies did really well and had at least 4 of the elements in there. So an A grade here is having 4 of the 5 elements, and you can see 53% of all companies did a really good job here on personalization.
Yeah.
Now, after that, it drops off, and it's kind of evenly spread between B, C's, and D's. Interestingly, again, over on the right now, auto did very well on personalization. You see the actual salesperson reaching out with a personal email. Real estate, which is not scored very high on any of the other categories, but scored high here.
Yep.
So slow to respond, not particularly persistent, but in the response that comes, very personal.
Might be that one email, but it's well written.
That's very good. Okay. So we've now discussed the 4 Ps. I'm sorry, we haven't. We've discussed 3 Ps. Let's get to the 4th P quickly. This is simply, does the email part of the communication get into the inbox? Because 50% of emails end up in spam. Erroin and I were just looking for something today, and we both found it in our spam folder.
Yeah.
That was important. It's harder, obviously. Spam detection is getting much better. And I think this last point to me really drives it home. It doesn't matter how fast you are, how persistent you are, and how personal you are if no one sees the message.
It means like you've never called, touched out, and reached to them anyway, as if you were never there.
It's like you never responded. You just joined that other class of non-responders.
Exactly right.
All right. Let's see how companies did. What we do is we submit the email to Send Forensics, which is a third-party service, which gives us a score on how likely that email is to end up in the inbox, not in the spam folder. In our particular study, 94% was the highest scored email, 54% was the lowest. Only 2% earned an A grade versus 43% in our previous year's survey. This was a very interesting finding. Last year, performance received the most A grades, but the lowest this year, and we believe that it's getting harder and harder to land emails consistently in the inbox because of the increasing use of sophisticated spam filtering. And so an email that worked 2 years ago and got an A grade, this year very few landed an A grade on this test.
That's shocking.
Media and publishers had 8%, but that was the highest.
Yeah.
So this is a hard one for every company, I think, to really deal with. And we have some suggestions in the report on how to formulate an email that's most likely to get in. Simple, personalized, one-to-one.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, we will now introduce to you the overall scores that companies did in this research. And you can see here that now we're totaling up the grades in each of the 4 Ps, and we're giving an overall score. 8% of the companies got an A grade.
Yep.
A lot, 40% landed in the B.
Yep.
C, 20%. D, not too many. F, those are the people who didn't respond at all.
Yep.
Okay? Now, interestingly, by industry on the right side, 30% of companies in the automotive industry that were surveyed got an A grade, by far and away the highest across all of the industries. These guys have it dialed in. Thoughts on why?
Well, one reason is they're secret shopped a lot by the manufacturers, so they're incentivized to go out and reach out, be prompt, engage, and make sure they're landing in the inbox and converting those customers into actual car buyers. So they are given incentives by the dealers, by the manufacturers. If they don't meet those time frames to reach out to that lead, they lose those incentives very, very quickly. So there's a monetary component to the reason why they get out there. And plus, that car on the lot devalues very quickly if they can't move it. Now, what's interesting, the next higher 2 on there was media and technology, both scored at 9%. Again, I think they recognize the need for promptness. They're not necessarily persistent, but they also are very high in personalization to get that conversion, and then followed up by the need for cheeks in the seats in the education area. Surprisingly, when it comes to real estate and mortgage and the housing market, depending where you are in the country, you still need to reach out to those buyers and those sellers out there, and yet they tend to not really care about their buyers or their sellers. Very sad.
Not good. There's more detail of the industries and the overall grading in the report, which we're going to send you. Let's jump into a poll question now. Can you tell us who's primarily responsible for following up on leads in your organization? And the reason we're asking this question is we've got a few best blockers on our next slide about why leads fall through the cracks and don't get the 4 Ps. And we wanted to shape that as much as possible to the audience and how you're doing lead follow-up in your organization. So let's take a look.
A lot of people with inside sales. A lot of field sales, marketing. Surprising, Carl. Your team's got to follow up on some stuff.
We'll give a few more seconds here for some votes to come in. Thank you for your participation in the polls. It really helps us understand what's top of mind for you. And so we've got, if we total up inside sales and field sales, it's probably, what, double or triple marketing, and then call center or an agent set of agents.
And then those mystery others out there as well, too.
There's some others.
Yes.
We don't have anybody here who's using channel partners to follow up, interestingly.
Yep.
I've experienced that a lot as a marketer, that you pass leads to channel partners and you have no clue if they ever follow up.
Not this audience. They send directly to their team.
So we've got 60% with some sales follow-up, 23% then marketing's responsibility to do that first qualification, and then 8% call centers. Great. So as we talk about why can't everyone get the trophy, Erroin, why don't you start, because you're the sales guy and a lot of the people here use sales follow-up.
Well, first off, let's talk about there's bias, right? A salesperson has biases who they think a great buyer is. You know, if someone comes in on a Gmail address or a Hotmail address versus a corporate address, they'll bias that person out. Then there's process bottlenecks. You've got lead scoring. We've got lead match. We've got all these things. When that person hits submit, it may take 18 minutes before it gets to my rep to make the call. And then that rep's got to ferret out, does it go to my channel partner? Does it go into which territory before they even do that? Then there's the cherry picking. Man, if it's every great company that's out there, I want the great company. Then there's mistakes. The lead makes a mistake filling out the form without giving the right telephone number, possibly. The rep makes a mistake in reading what the lead really wanted. Then you got turnover. One of our customers, they turn out their inside sales team every 90 days. So it's basically 4 times a year they're having a whole new group of people reaching out to their leads. And then from a management perspective, do I have visibility in the process? Where's the breakdown? Training is all over the place. Reps just drop the ball. And then lastly, we're talking about that persistence, right? That's a high cost for a low value return. Do I really want to put my human capital on someone that's already cold?
Fair enough.
That's tough, man. That's my job, Carl. It's hard. I have a hard job.
Well, that's why we pay you the big bucks.
Just give me the hottest leads I just want to buy right now and sign orders and make my life so much easier. So,
great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And if anyone out there has some ideas about what you think might be a blocker in your organization, feel free to share it in the chat, and we'll mention it here. You know, someone, Andre, mentions third-party companies. So great comment there. Often these leads are outsourced to a third party for follow-up, and they may do a great job on persistence and personalization, but imagine it could take a while for that lead to get from my system to their system, be put in front. So promptness may be an issue there.
Yep.
With a third party. All right. So these are some of the blockers. In the report, we share some more practices about how you can improve. Let's bring up the poll now here and say, hey, are you using any technologies to help you improve or looking to invest in any technologies to help you improve this lead follow-up? And so we have things like CRM, marketing, or email automation tools, dialing, power dialing technologies, chat tools if someone's on the website to engage them right there, any data appending or data augmentation, anyone using AI to reach out to leads. And then we have the other, and the other, for the other category, we have the others. So let's go ahead and bring up the results. We've got, of course, most people using CRM, I'm guessing, but also investing in that as well.
They're investing a lot of dollars into that.
And marketing automation. And then after that, it tends to fall off quite a bit. But look at AI there, got 3% of the folks said they're investing in some AI in their organization. So pretty impressive. So you've seen now why lead follow-up is so important. You've seen that companies do it relatively poorly. If a third of them don't even follow up at all.
Yeah.
You see how we graded them on what we call the 4 Ps. I would recommend that you all secret shop your own company, and with the research report in hand, you can use the 4 Ps to grade your own company. You'll also see when we get to the Q&A slide, we have a link where you can add your company to our research report. We'll do the secret shopping of your company, give you the grade and scorecard, and send it to you when we do our annual survey. So you'll have an opportunity to submit your own company. So I hope that's been useful to you. What I want to have Erroin do is introduce how we're doing it at Conversica and how that might help with this lead follow-up.
Sure, excellent. So what if you could have the world's best sort of sales assistant working for you all the time, every single day, 24/7, around the clock, always in a good mood, always polite, always persistent, never gets discouraged, and more importantly is never taking one of those idiotic breaks next to the water cooler. So if you look at what we do at Conversica is we have that AI sales assistant for you. Now we engage over email and also now soon by SMS. The AI assistant can reach out to all of your leads in a timely fashion to engage them in a polite and persistent manner without being too pushy. Again, not trying to sell somebody, but just trying to engage them in a conversation to have a human actually reach out to another human and possibly get into a deal cycle or an opportunity. As you can see here on the screen, on the blue side versus the green side, Bill has downloaded a white paper on sales effectiveness. Rachel reaches out to engage him. It matches our 4 Ps. It's a polite message. It's personalized, not too much over the top, and basically asking if he wants to set up a call. Bill, it takes multiple attempts to get there. Bill comes back and says, hey, can we talk in person, tomorrow? And more importantly, I don't want to talk right now because I'm busy doing contracts and don't want to give you my undivided attention. So the true human response back to our AI sales assistant asking if that person wants to set up a call. Now we talked about in promptness not just the speed to contact, but speed throughout that process to keep that lead warm. So what we have happen is Rachel reaches out to make sure that meeting can be scheduled. And she reaches out, introduces Jim, my human sales rep, to Bill, and she basically asks him, what's the best number to call him on during the day? So we're letting the lead tell us how to contact him. Maybe he made a mistake filling out the form. Maybe he forgot to put in a false number on the form. Bill reaches back out to Rachel and says, have Jim basically call my cell at 650-555-1212. And even says, you'll never get me on my office phone, exclamation point. So what does my rep have now? My rep knows that Bill wants to have a call, not today, but tomorrow, so I'm not going to harass him today. Rachel's already reached out to provide that promptness. And more importantly, he's giving us the best contact number through the day and lets us know that he'll never answer his direct line or his office line. And throughout this entire process, my rep's engaged with the AI assistant. She's letting him know where the lead is, providing visibility into the process and into the status. And we hand that off to Jim. Now, a few days later, Jim's got the opportunity to contact Bill. Rachel reaches out to Bill again to make sure Jim actually connected with Bill. And we ask him sort of a twofold question, which is, did you connect with Jim? And that sentence up above kind of plants, did you get all the information that you were looking for? And we find out from Bill that Jim never reached out to him. Maybe I missed the call. Now, as a sales leader, that's important to me when I sit down with Carl and we talk about our lead follow-up as to why my inside sales team is not following up with those leads. We have transparency in the process. And what some of our customers have seen is that Bill may come back and say, I talked to Jim, but Jim couldn't answer some of my basic questions. I went to go speak to one of your competitors. I'm buying from them. So we can see where we're losing deals in the process as well too. And we have, as a SaaS service, we have a dashboard where you can see how your assistant's working for you over time, how many hot leads she's giving for you, how your reps are doing, how many leads are at risk. Those are where those leads weren't engaged. How many new telephone numbers we received from contacting with the lead. And more importantly, we measure an engagement of where a human being responds back, whether they're interested or not, in actually having a conversation with one of our sales reps. And we do this day in and day out for many different organizations across the board, not just B2B and Fortune 500 companies, but smaller companies in the B2C space as well too. Technology, for-profit education, insurance, telecom, all those industries that we survey are industries that we serve with Conversica. And I think that's it for my portion of the talk. Carl, I think we're on to questions.
Absolutely. So thank you for that commercial message from our sponsor. Really appreciate that, Erroin. And I encourage any of you who are interested in learning more about how you can use some AI to improve lead follow-up, take a look. I challenge you to go to our website and request a demo and measure us. We better deliver on all the 4 Ps ourselves.
We better, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, Selma, over to you. Do we have some additional questions queued up that we want to get in our remaining 5 minutes here with our audience?
Yes. Yeah, we have quite a few, so I'll go ahead and get started. We have one coming from Andre, and he wants to know, what is better, to use a third-party company that will handle your sales or to build a smaller sales team in-house?
Well, I'll take that one, someone. So, Andre, I would say build a team in-house. When I first started at Conversica, one of my first people I talked to, she asked about, why use an AI versus a human? And I said, because the AI is better, faster. She said, yep, but I can walk down the hallway and slap my human when they do something stupid. I can't slap a box. And so having an in-house sales team, you can hold them accountable. You can set your commission criteria for them. You basically have control over the metrics. When you outsource it out to another team, you lose a lot of that control, and you kind of spend more time doing auditing than actually dealing with hot leads on a transfer.
Great answer. I would add that, and we should have said this up front, our research is done in the U.S. and Canada. When you introduce international regions, that could change, right? If you want to have prompt persistent follow-up in Singapore or India or South Africa, if you're a smaller company, you might need to outsource rather than have someone, or maybe you could have an AI assistant do it because she works 24/7. Okay, exactly. Selma, back to you.
All right, thank you to both of you. This question is coming from Eli, and he wants to know, in your research, are there specific industries where there's really no value in following up more than once or twice, like maybe for lower value items?
Well, I think it's a great question, and once again, we measured across 9 industries. I noticed some people are asking, like, did you measure healthcare, medical services? So we didn't do other ones. That we did the 9 that are in the report. But so in those 9, we focused on industries where leads matter. That is, ultimately, you need to talk to someone.
Yeah.
So we're not doing e-commerce or retail where you're just going to go buy something on the website. We're talking about industries where a person needs to speak with another person to consummate the transaction. And there we feel like if you're going to have a human in your company who's going to talk to a human to try and sell something, why would you not make all of these attempts?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, you might think for financial gain, diminishing returns after the second or third is true. And then I would really recommend you look at some way to automate it like we're suggesting with Conversica, because you can get 5, 7, 8, 12 touches without paying anything extra to do it.
And especially if you've already abandoned those leads as well too, it's another great way to automate that process without wasting human capital for high cost for low value return.
Perfect. I wanted to remind you that up on the screen we have 2 links for you. We're also putting up a poll here at the end. Selma, go ahead and put up that last poll where you can say, so you've heard a little bit about this AI and how it could be used to help automate some of this lead follow-up. How interested would your organization be in something like that? Would love to hear your feedback. While that's coming in, Selma, are there additional questions?
Yeah, we have time for a quick response for one more, and this is coming from Jen, and she wants to know, what kind of options are there to have this AI technology be able to answer technical questions or provide answers personalized to our business?
Well, absolutely yes. There's kind of the typical top questions that you would get that the AI can handle. When the AI can't handle the question, then, hey, we see that as a buying signal. Someone's asking for more information. The AI's job is to get the person connected to the human as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And Lauren said she just tried the Conversica talk bubble on the website. So we don't have an on-site web chat. We do everything over email and over text message. So we're going to smack the human being that's supposed to be manning that chat bubble right now and find out why they're not answering you back.
That's a real person.
That's a real person, yeah.
All right.
Time for another, Selma, or are we at the top of the hour?
We unfortunately have come to the end, so we do not have any time for today, but again, feel free to connect with our speakers if you have any more follow-up questions, and they can connect with you as well.